Okay, Ika. Let's
Okay,
start.
yeah, maybe I repeat again, yeah.
Oh,
Okay, good
okay.
afternoon. Okay, my name is Ika Rahmayanti. I will be the moderator for today's session, a webinar with topic related to interior design in endemic area. First of all, I would like to introduce our speaker today, Miss Julie Rose from Istituto Marangoni, London. Hello and welcome. Yeah, good afternoon, Miss Julie.
Thank you.
Yeah, uh, to make it quick, before we go on to her presentation, I would like to give a brief introduction of our speaker. Miss Julie Rose is a program leader for design in Istituto Marangoni, London. She spent over 20 years living and working in Singapore, Sri Lanka, and Kenya. She's gaining experience in academic institutions through senior management roles and full-time lecturing. Responsibilities including establish new departments and academic specialist streams, including a glass for a material study, product design, jewelry design, furniture design, and transportation design. As an academic director, she was actively involved in curriculum development, university partnerships, quality assurance, project management, and team leadership, in addition to full-time lecturing in fashion design, fashion marketing, interior design, graphic design, and multimedia design. She's also passionate about design thinking, sustainability, teaching and learning, and she has recently completed a Master of Philosophy through the University of Edinburgh, specializing in sustainability through establishing recycled glass workshops for women from informal settlements in Nairobi, Kenya. So, dear audience, let's go on to the presentation and welcoming Miss Julie Rose. And if you have any question along or after the presentation, please write down at the chat forum, or you can address it directly in the question and answer session after the presentation. Okay, Miss Julie, the time is yours.
Thank you so much for the introduction, Ika. Very much appreciated, and thank you for inviting me today. I'll just work out how to share the presentation now.
You're welcome.
Screen, share screen. Can everybody see that? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so I cannot see the chat at the moment. So if everyone is all right, then maybe I can just do the presentation and then we can do the questions and answers at the end if everybody is okay with that. Would that be all right? Yes. Okay, fantastic. So thanks again for the invite. And I think it's a very sort of hot topic, interior design throughout the endemic in every part of the world for all of us. So thanks again for the introduction. And yes, so Julie Ross, I did spend quite a bit of time in Singapore, 14 years in total, and traveled to Malaysia and the region. So it's very nice to see everybody today. So without further ado, if we can really think about the importance of, more importantly, I think, the role of interior design in an endemic. Oh, sorry, I have just done something here. I've lost. Sorry. Lost the PowerPoint presentation. 1 second. Can you see it now? Sorry.
Yep, I can see it.
Okay. I don't know what I pressed there. I pressed something.
It's okay.
Okay.
All right.
All right, we'll try again. So the role of interior design in an endemic era. And I think the role of interior design is very, very important because I think it's given us a huge opportunity really globally to rethink design values. And I think it doesn't matter in a sense which country we're all in at the moment. We've all been impacted by COVID-19 tremendously. And I think, you know, globally, it really is an opportunity. And I would say it's a huge opportunity and a very positive era that we're entering as designers, and I think particularly for interior design, because it's really made us sit up, and as students, as academics, as practitioners, as researchers, I think it's critical now really to rethink what design values are. And I'm not sure if many students actually know that this was actually one of the first Apple Macs. It's something that's quite classic, so I just thought I would put that in as a starter to the presentation. So really, I think one way that we need to start thinking about new values is actually how we interact. And this is a very personal thing. And I know we are talking about interior design, but I think it's essential that as individuals, we take responsibilities when we do think about design practice and design values. And I really believe that this starts from within as individuals. It doesn't matter what age we are, it doesn't matter which country we're from, you know, cultural values. I think it's responsibility that has now started to take the forefront of interior design and every types of design applications throughout the endemic. So really the first thing that we need to think about as interior designers is this adaptation and new ways of real social interaction. I thought this was a lovely image, the two ladies having a chat outdoors during the pandemic era. And I think the key thing that we all need to really think about as well, and again, I actually believe this is about collective thinking as interior designers and designers as a whole. I actually believe this impacts every aspect of design, whether it's fashion design or interior design or product design, jewelry design, furniture design, architecture. We've all been impacted by the pandemic and which is now an endemic. And I think it's critical that whether we live in built-up environment or in rural environments, that we actually start to appreciate again the values of who we are and where we are and what the roles of interior design are within the endemic. And I believe one of the starting points, if you like, really is rethinking our spaces. So whether, as I said earlier, it's in large cities where there's lots of pollution, or whether it's in beautiful sort of peaceful nature surroundings. So I think these are areas that we need to start looking at. So depending on where we are in the world, whether we live in a city, whether we live in a rural community, as interior designers, we are responsible for how we, I would say, positively embrace the situation that we are in because of the endemic. And I know that might sound odd, but really I think there's so many, there have been so many aspects of having to be aware of the impact of COVID-19 that it has had a lot of negative impacts, obviously with global warming, etc. in addition. But I truly believe this has given us new opportunities. So again, rethinking our spaces would be one aspect that we really start to think about as interior designers. And I think this is also quite an interesting question as designers moving forwards. You know, it almost asks the question in a funny way of what is luxury. I think we've all had for several years now ideas about what luxury is in terms of perhaps luxury brands or luxury interiors, luxury cars, luxury products, luxury jewelry. So I've put this slide in because I think it's an interesting question as designers and practitioners and academics and researchers, really, is that, you know, because of COVID-19 and the impact that it's had on many design industries, I wonder if this is actually quite a sort of topic for discussion, really. Could it be, in a funny way, that space becomes a new luxury because we have been impacted so much, as I said, globally, and also nationally and individually and collectively by COVID. So this is maybe just a question for people to think about. Could it be that space moving forwards could be considered as a new luxury? And then I think this is also critical, that we've been forced, in a sense, to really adapt to what is, I think globally, the term is the new norm. And obviously, you know, various countries and various parts of the world at the moment are actually are at different levels of you know, adapting to COVID-19. Different countries have different policies, I don't know if that's the right word, in place, but in terms of, you know, lockdowns, not being in lockdown, hybrid education, face-to-face, working from home. So I think these are huge, I would say, results because of the pandemic, that we've actually really had to think about human-centered systems and, in a sense, be much more, I suppose, responsible as individuals and within our families, within our communities, within our cities, and also globally. So it's sort of resetting the thinking in terms of how we interact with each other. Yeah, and I think that's sort of impacted us, like I said, individually, but also on a massive level as well. So really, again, I think the word that keeps coming up here is adapting to the new norm, but specifically for human-centered systems. And then I suppose this brings up a huge question for us, really getting into interior design now, and really, how do we see future buildings? How do we see green buildings? How do we see technology? How do we see the adaptation of space, taking into consideration, obviously, that there are new ways of interacting with people in buildings? So we really need to think about increasing airflow, ventilation systems, windows that open gym rooms. Well, this is obviously quite a fancy future building, but obviously dividers have become the norm now, whether we're in, you know, high-rise buildings, apartment blocks, hotels, etc. And I think this is something that we all have to just absolutely adapt to. Again, as a result of the pandemic, touchless entry, features that have to be really thought through for future buildings. And also in terms of space again, excuse me, balconies on all units. So again, this idea about airflow, but also wider lobby stairs, carpets and art, because I think what's starting to happen here, because as a result of this, we really need to also embrace the ideas about well-being moving forwards, and that's something that I'll touch upon later in the presentation as well. But really starting to think about how we, on a day-to-day basis, really change our lives as designers in terms of well-being, and to just ensure that, that we really think through possible solutions. And again, the future of office spaces. I'm actually sitting in here in a room all on my own, and there are some tutors and students on campus at the moment, but I'm actually not wearing my mask because I've got the room to myself. But I'm sure, as we all know, it's really impacted office spaces and also educational spaces, because obviously within the last 1.5 years, lots of institutions, universities, excuse me, have either had to adapt to being fully online, or in some cases where it's been possible, to adapt to a hybrid mode of delivery, and that's exactly what we've done, certainly when the pandemic broke out. So I think this is something that we all need to embrace really as designers, and see this as a kind of real opportunity to be innovative and to be creative, and just to really think, okay, how can we really think about now and the future, and how can we adapt to the endemic, and really about thinking about design solutions that will bring more wellness, if you like, into future office spaces and how we interact with colleagues. And I also say that as an educational institution as well, because, you know, really it's been fraught in terms of challenges about how we actually have had to adapt to the pandemic. Excuse me. Hospitality. Now, this was an image that was taken prior to the pandemic breakout. And I think you can see here that there's absolutely no evidence of screens and, excuse me, one second, sorry. There's absolutely no evidence of post-COVID planning and space planning. So it's sort of refreshing to see an image of a hotel where this was pre-pandemic and really sort of luxurious. And I would say retail design is something that's been impacted tremendously. If you look at any big city centre, certainly in London, and where our campus is in Shoreditch, it used to be absolutely just full and chock-a-block of people shopping constantly. And I think, you know, if you look at high streets globally around the world, I think city centres have just been really, really, really impacted by COVID-19. And I think especially what's happening now is that this is another huge challenge for interior designers, because as more people adapt and have had to really embrace technology, and also by buying online a lot, you know, during lockdown, etc. I think it was just really something that we have to embrace in a way as interior designers, and think, okay, well, how can we actually adapt to this? Because retail definitely has suffered. And so again, it's about innovative design solutions. And as students, I think that's really, really essential and very, very important. How can we get, you know, city centres buzzing and thriving again? You know, is it about designing little pop-up stores, or is it about somehow or other, because of this sort of space issue now, you know, can we do pop-up solutions in perhaps areas that we might not have thought possible before? But I think as interior designers and designers as a whole now, we all really need to think about retail design as I would say probably as a priority, because this is certainly a sector that has been impacted tremendously by COVID-19. So I would sort of put it out there to all of you that this might be one area that really, really, really needs some consideration, and really needs some original and innovative design solutions, because, yep, I think for most city centres, it's impacted, you know, face-to-face shopping, but also is the sort of question now moving forwards, well, how is it going to affect everybody? Because obviously with so many people purchasing online, so maybe we really need to think about, you know, how does this move forwards in terms of retail design? And then healthcare. This is obviously another area. Apologies, I've got a very dry throat today. Healthcare is also another area that's going to be impacted tremendously. Now, we all know that the impact that it's had on hospitals and healthcare workers generally around the world. And again, I would reach out to you as interior designers to think about, we need to really think about this in terms of global, I would say, responsibility, because yet again, were impacted on different levels depending on which country we are in, where we're based, and what are the particular problems relating to each country. Because I would say that, you know, healthcare in London is obviously very difficult for other people in sort of rural communities in Africa. So, you know, I think we need to really start to look locally and see what our own issues are regarding healthcare, but most importantly, as I suppose global citizens, as interior designers, we need to start thinking about real solutions. And again, I think that raises the importance of interior design and how we can sort of apply our knowledge and skills and innovation to find some real solutions. And then residential design. I think this is probably another huge area that's obviously been impacted by the arrival of COVID-19 and now the endemic, and really about asking questions of how residential design has been impacted. And I'm sure each and every one of us has gone through this in the last 1.5 years in terms of change at home, probably having to share more space with families, with siblings, and really just re-looking at the ideas about space and adaptability and how we move forwards in terms of residential design now and in the next few years, because we really have had to find innovative solutions in terms of working from home and adapting to perhaps having more people in the space where normally it would just be for residential purposes, but now having to also embrace perhaps studying from home and working from home as well. Lovely, lovely, lovely design solutions. But I think this obviously is one image that I've selected here, because I think if we all could, we would all love a design solution like this. And I think this has become incredibly, popular for a lot of people in the UK. But again, this brings about the idea about what is also affordable. And in a sense, this is a luxury, I would say, to have, you know, a lovely big open garden space and be able to construct and pay for a beautiful office that you can work from home. But not everybody is in that position where they can, A, have a lovely big open garden, and also B, to be able to have the finances to construct something like that. So I think this is a fantastic design solution in a sense, but also, you know, how realistic is it for perhaps the cities that you live in, that I live in, that other people live in? You know, it is one solution. But again, I think it's the role of interior designers to start to really think about, okay, maybe how do we do this in a tiny, tiny flat where there's 2 bedrooms with a family of 5 people? You know, how can we respond to that as a design challenge and work out some realistic solutions about how we can work from home effectively? Because working from home, studying from home has obviously impacted millions of people around the world. And we've all had to sort of adapt and change our ways that you know, were normal to us before, in a sense, or maybe that we really hadn't anticipated that we might lose certain routines, or, you know, just routines that we carry on a day-to-day basis and perhaps take for granted. So again, really starting to think about these ideas about rethinking values and how this has hit us, and really how we respond to this as interior designers. So, yep, great solution. However, probably not the best solution for everybody, because it's not very practical for a lot of people. So I would like to say probably at this point now is that as we've sort of looked at some of the areas that have been impacted a lot by the pandemic, perhaps now we should really start to consider emerging design challenges. And I think the word is emerging because we've already been through 1.5 years now of the pandemic. And it's obviously, as we said before, the new norm. And so it's something that we're all having to adapt to. So therefore, what could be emerging, excuse me, design challenges? So I think starting from the very beginning, what we need to do is reassess the built environment. Now, obviously, excuse me, this is from London and this is Canary Wharf. And this is a very sort of built up, successful area of London. But what we need to do here is really evaluate our own built environments and really see, okay, how can we tackle some of the issues as we embrace, I suppose is the word, of the new norm. And rethinking the role of interior design is obviously the key aspect to change, and we need to be innovators and we need to provide solutions as we move forwards in the endemic. And I think this is about clear communication and how we actually are able to sort of improve interior environments and really to find solutions that we think about interior design now as a way of really being part of a bigger process of improving environments for all of us, whether it's residential design, you know, whether it's retail, whether it's hospitality. So I think we have to rethink what it is that we do so that we know that whatever solutions that we create, that once we apply it, that it actually has a positive impact for everybody. So key things to think about is really rethinking the role of interior design. Is it to just make something look pretty? No, I think we really have now an opportunity to reassess the value of interior design and the role of it in people's lives. And then I suppose another thing that we really also need to consider here is the role of the interior designer. How much responsibility do we have as interior designers as we progress through the pandemic and how we progress and move forwards? And I think what is essential here is to really, again, assess the value of interior design. What is it that we want ourselves to be within the community? You know, we do need to think about innovative solutions, about well-being. How does this impact people? How does our role as interior designers impact individuals, communities, countries? It's a huge opportunity to really assess function and aesthetics. So again, another key point, I think, is really rethinking the role of the interior design as we progress and move forwards. Now, this is something that I think is a very interesting way forward in terms of interior design, because perhaps as we move forwards, we also need to reassess in terms of interior design education. What are the core values that we're looking at? Obviously, it's about innovation. It's about finding creative solutions. But also, surely it's about embracing new technologies. Certainly here, we think about traditional skills like drawing and model making and understanding three-dimensional forms, which are essential. But also, as we strive to move forward, it's about embracing technology. It's about hardware and software. And I think what's also important is that it's about embracing the digital era as well. So how do we develop these core skills in terms of drawing, model making, visualization, rendering, digitization, floor planning, space planning, but then how do we sort of embrace the ideas moving forwards of augmented reality and virtual reality as interior designers, not just as interior designers, but perhaps as jewelry designers as well. You know, will we be in a situation, of course, we want to move as quickly as possible forwards in terms of being in a physical space again, but perhaps until that's 100% possible, you know, we can think about ways of how we can embrace new technologies like virtual reality and augmented reality. Because I think it's a very key way. We had some of our students in here with the technician, Sean, who I've actually shown on this screen here. And the interior design students were just, the master's interior design students were just blown away about the possibilities of using virtual reality so that they've can, you know, obviously walk through their own spaces that they've designed, etc. So I think this is a really interesting way of developing design skills and communicating interior design skills in future with the addition of augmented reality and virtual reality. Obviously, we want to be, and we are involved in physical spaces. This is everything that we've done for many, many years. But I think the point here is really at what level we embrace these new technologies to support key skills that we learn as interior designers. So it becomes part of the design process naturally, and as a new way, perhaps, or evolving way for, you know, people globally to just tune in and to be able to virtually experience a new building that you've, you know, completed as part of an interior design project, whether it's residential or whether it's commercial. So technology, I think, definitely we've all had to really adapt to the minute that COVID-19 hit us, whether it was in the form of you know, social media generally, but also as students and also as academic institutions. So new technologies, very important. And then I think another way that we're really progressing in some ways is that we as interior designers absolutely need to, when we talk about reevaluating what design means, the role of interior design and also interior designers, I think perhaps the word is responsibility moving forwards. And it isn't just about, you know, space being the new luxury. It isn't just about new technologies, but it's really about being responsible, again, as individuals and as designers. We're all seeing the effects and the impacts, not just of the endemic now, but also, you know, global warming has just hit every part of the world, almost. And so, again, rethinking our design values, I think it's essential that we really start to question why we use some materials, traditional materials, apologies, because I think the days now where we used to be able to say, oh yeah, it would be fantastic to be able to say for a new kitchen top, yes, wonderful, let's get some marble over from Italy, you know, well, that's terrific. It's the best marble available, perhaps, for the job. But really now we need to be responsible. We really need to start thinking about our own carbon footprint. And so really, what is it about now moving forwards? What is critical, I believe, is that we really need to start re-examining our carbon footprint as interior designers and really start to embrace materials and start to think about the selection of materials and how we apply those materials to a particular interior design project, but not just about the applications, but about the processes. And also, ultimately, it's about the product lifespan, isn't it? The material lifespan. And I think moving forwards, I think what's become critical for all of us as well is the lifespan of this particular material. But also what's becoming very critical for all of us is disposal. Because ultimately, if we don't shift to a circular economy and we carry on with, landfill usage, I mean, it's common sense what's going to happen is if we keep doing this as a global society, the landfills are going to get full. We've seen what's happening to the planet. We've seen what's happening with regards to global warming. And I think, therefore, it's critical as interior designers that we really start to think about new materials and how that will have less impact in terms of damage to the environment. So we've actually started to build up a material lab here at Marangoni in London, which I think is essential for students to be able to come in and start to really feel the material and get a sense of how that material will work in a particular interior design project, but also possibilities of application, longevity, and ultimately disposal. And then really, I think, as we start to sort of shift towards the end of this presentation, I'd really love everybody just to have a think about what these words mean, ethical design, because it's up to us as individuals and practitioners and researchers about how far we adapt or adopt ethical design. And this is actually an image of the Green School in Bali, which I've always been fascinated by in terms of their green philosophy, but also really wanted to visit. But I was able to get this image. And I think what we really need to think about is, okay, well, what is ethical design? You know, the terminology of sustainable design has been used so often and perhaps overly used in some cases. And I think what we need to reassess here moving forwards is what is ethical design. And really, ultimately, that starts from the individual. And it really makes us think as designers as well. The entire creative process as an interior designer, it starts from the beginning, you know, from when you're given a project brief or when you're given a live project. How do we view that entire creative process from the very beginning? Is it a book and a pencil? You know, is it an iPad? Or, you know, what is it that we start to kind of begin the creative process with? So I think ethical design is about evaluating each stage of the creative process to the final design solution in interior design. And that's a kind of massive journey, the whole creative process. So again, this is not my opinion, it's just throwing out some ideas here about how do we perceive ethical design in relationship, to interior design. And really, it's about thinking through our own values and our own ethics. So obviously, materiality comes into it as well, and locally sourced materials. So again, looking at traditional methods perhaps as well. So it's about almost going back 360 degrees in a way to reevaluate methods, materials, and processes for interior design and seeing what an impact that has. And it's actually also about social responsibility, how it impacts society, communities, and yes, global impacts eventually. So traditional methods and materials. I was talking briefly earlier on about new materials, but I think when we talk about ethical design moving forwards, I think it's essential that we really, really, really embrace local materials, traditional methods. It's about cultural values. It's reassessing, it's re-looking at what materials are available to us locally. It's about reassessing traditional craftsmanship. It's also looking at the number of parts that are used to construct perhaps a kind of ceiling or a piece of furniture. I mean, surely the second that we look at traditional methods of weaving, using rattan for you know, a structure or for a piece of furniture, then really the ideas about sustainability is the number of parts used in the process and the manufacturing. So the minute that we forget about having to use fancy sort of screws and nails, but you know, instead that we replace that with more traditional methods like using locally sourced materials and methods of construction which ultimately benefit local communities and ultimately ensures that traditional values are upheld in terms of craftsmanship and the attention to detail. And this has so many values, you know, not just economically in providing jobs, etc., for local communities, but it keeps tradition alive. And you know, there's this constant sort of, I suppose, discussion on the value of digitization and new technologies and what traditional values are. So I think, you know, as a society and globally, we really need to be not careful, but I think the word is mindful about how this progresses in terms of new technologies and traditional sort of materials and methods of making. So again, I think it's a responsibility, or at least it's something that as students, you know, we really, really, really need to think about how we can, in many ways, improve people's lifestyles. How can we come up with really innovative and original solutions, but also by really reflecting on traditional practices and applications with materials. So I believe that materiality is actually a huge part of interior design as we progress forwards. And then vernacular architecture, I took a picture of this, sorry, I put this image in here because I think as we move forwards as well, you know, we're in a sense bombarded with solutions of you know, new technology, etc. But again, it's reassessing what we have at hand, as it were. And it's not just about materiality and also space considerations, finishes, applications, you know, looking for more natural solutions, natural dyes, as opposed to really synthetic and chemically treated finishes. I think it's just essential that in many ways we kind of return back to the bases and we look at what we have in terms of resources, and we have to really think about how we harness, perhaps, you know, obviously solar power here, solar panels that have been put within this example of architecture here, and natural airflow. So again, it's really rethinking the sense of perhaps more well-being, not just for humans, primarily for the planet, but obviously as we inhabit the planet as human beings, how can we make it better for everybody? And really just looking at perhaps traditional solutions, and then how do we apply that in 21st century, interiors. So then just, I think finally, as I sort of come to an end of this presentation, I'm sure all of you, many of you have seen this, and I think what is sort of spectacular about this image, Gardens by the Bay in Singapore, is that we're moving globally towards much more as a well-being trend, in a sense, is biophilic design. And I think what's very optimistic about this is that Singapore is definitely one city-state that is leading the way in terms of green design, in terms of architecture, sorry. And I think what is essential here is that as we progress and move forwards, that we start to see the relationship. Perhaps we maybe haven't thought about this so much, but due to COVID-19 and due to being in the pandemic, I think we've all sort of re-looked at ourselves as well as individuals, and perhaps realized that we need to be around nature more, and even so this is obviously architecturally and outside, but when it comes to biophilic design for interiors, it's essential that we really start to think about interior environments and how we implement this, and think about clever and innovative design solutions to bring nature into a sort of man-made environment. So I think this is a key area now moving forward. So it's not just about materiality and sort of rethinking, local materials and availability, but really applying this to a sort of larger application, not just in architecture, but also within interiors, about how we can get a closer relationship with nature, which has been proven and shows that obviously it gives us a kind of calmer ambience, and ultimately, surely it's about well-being for all of us. And I think this is probably coming towards the end of the presentation now. I think this might be the last slide. Ultimately, I believe what we do as designers, and again, this is maybe about reevaluating the role of the designer and the role of interior design, but I think one of the key things that's happened to all of us, in a sense, and brought us all together, commonalities, are that as a result of COVID-19, we've all had to rethink who and where we are in the world, and also our families, and also our communities, friends, your fellow peer students, fellow colleagues. I think what it has brought to us, and I would like to say that I believe this is really positive, is just an overall sense of well-being. So how do we really adapt to that moving forwards for all of us? And I would say, in conclusions, we've been given new design opportunities in several areas of interior design. So rethinking space, really, and depending on the different type of interior design that we're designing for, is really reassessing, rethinking space. Is it a luxury in future? It's a time to rethink design values and priorities. We've had an opportunity here to really rethink about each other and where we stand within, our own society. And so about well-being and mindfulness. And then I think as a whole, because in a way as well of global and local values and considerations. And I would say sustainable solutions, economic, social, political, environmental. Biophilic design, definitely as something to think about for the future, and really individual awareness of others, meaning family, friends, and community. And I believe this brings an end to the presentation for today. So thank you, everybody.
Okay, thank you, Miss Julie. Wow, such interesting insight. Yeah.
Apologies for my sore throat today. I don't know what's happened. Sincerest apologies.
It's okay. Yeah. Yeah, it's very interesting insight of how you as a designer responds to the endemic situation in which is we are can encounter now. Yeah. I think I come up to these insights that as an interior designer, we carried a lot of thoughts, an implication and a responsibility to this issue. I mean, how can we start new ways of thinking and acting, yeah, that can give a comprehensive solution to our present and future built environment. Whether we live in small cities or in the big cities, it doesn't matter. And we have to embrace it, yeah, and think mindfully, think locally, and move forward. I think that's it, yeah, Miss Julie.
Yes, yes.
Good thoughts and good incitement for us to rethink again as an interior designer. Okay, please give a big applause to Miss Julie, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. I see there's a couple of questions there. Do I have time just to quickly?
Okay, yeah, okay. We will
Sorry.
continue to the question and answer session. Maybe I can read some of.
Yeah, I just noticed it in the chat just now.
Yeah. The first one from Miss Nabila Aris, yeah. How do you think exploitation of local materials will affect the local resources like the rainforest and etc.?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, and I think what we have to do here is probably look. When I say inwardly, I mean obviously all of us are living in different parts of the world, and I think what it's our responsibility moving forwards to really see what's around us in terms of if there are rainforests, rubber plantations, what is going on environmentally around us. Because ultimately at this point in time, as students, you're learning the interior design process, but it's really important, I would say, to look at what's around you, what's being impacted. Perhaps, I don't know if it's governmental, blah, 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 but locally, I think, yes, if exploitation of local materials, definitely that will have a long-term effect. Absolutely. Maybe I'm a little bit older than the students here, I'm sure today, but I think it's critical. You're the generation now that is voicing up, that is looking, that is speaking, that is considering things like rainforest materials, how are the materials sourced? And yes, so I do think exploitation of local materials will have an impact, if it isn't already. So I don't know if that's applicable to your particular own area or globally. So yeah. I don't know if that's answered that first question.
How, Miss Nabila? Oh, that question is from Daniel Ismail, yeah. Is it answer your question already?
Yes, it's answered. Thank you, Julie.
Okay.
We got another second question.
Yeah, the second question, yeah. In your opinion, how will the new materials change the design
Oh, okay.
typologies? Yeah, will vernacular design language reappear?
Okay, is that question from Danielle? Danielle, I also think this is a really interesting question. I'm curious to see what's going to happen in, say, 10 years' time, because I think what's happening is that as a whole, you know, globally in design, in interior design, I think we're being forced in many ways to ask ourselves a lot of questions, because my goodness, all of us, you know, we've been impacted with COVID, but we've also been highly, and we are being highly impacted by global warming, or it's very much, you know, COP26 is happening in Glasgow soon. You know, that we're dealing with so much change, and I think the word is adaptability here. So, but I'm curious, I think that's a really good question, because I think what will be interesting to see how we hopefully move forwards is to embrace local vernacular design language, you know, to embrace local materials, to get to connect with local craftspeople, because in a sense, this is an opportunity to do that. And in many ways, if we don't connect, then there's a fear of this sort of dying out, in a sense, these local skills. I mean, I'm sure textiles, wood, fabrics, you know, it's so rich in terms of knowledge and skills and generations and cultures. And I think cultural values are extremely important globally. And so just in answer, I don't know, but I would like to think that everybody is reassessing, you know, new materials, existing materials. How do we balance that out? What's going to impact less dramatically on the climate? And I think that word is responsibility. You know, maybe 10 years ago, students, gosh, over 10 years ago, teaching students, you know, and then we talked about sustainability, but even 15 years ago, at that point, that was probably a choice. But I think now we don't really have choices if we want to move forwards and embrace what we do as designers. But it is about it is actually about choice. But I mean, globally, I think it's impacting all of us that yeah, I think materials, vernacular design, language, yep, I think it is appearing. Yep. I hope that answers the question.
I hope that answered your question. I think so. Yeah. Okay. I think one more question from me, actually.
Okay, Ika.
Okay. Before the time is up, what do you think about the idea of future design approach of this collaboration, the interdesign discipline, to start off the new way to think? I mean, partially, yeah, but more comprehensive as a design team to find a solution, especially in this endemic area.
Ika, I think it's essential. Design thinking is changing, and I think I probably should have touched a little bit more on that. I think what's happening is that design is evolving, design thinking is evolving, and no longer is it about the sort of the individual and the client. It's definitely about collective thinking and finding collaborative results. So definitely collaboration. We're doing quite a bit of that with our students here, meaning the product design students will work with the visual design students on a project. So we're starting to embed that a lot anyway in the studio setup. But I think globally and as a design trend, I think design thinking is changing, and absolutely collaborative projects are brilliant solutions, because again, it revives cultural aspects and traditions. And yeah. Oh, am I still sharing? Somebody said I'm still sharing the screen.
It's okay.
Okay, sorry. So yeah, I think collaborative is the way forwards. It's no longer about the individual.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's about the team. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Collective thinking.
Yes, collective thinking and a new way of thinking, yeah.
Exactly.
Mindfully.
Mindfully and respectfully. Yes, always.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I think the time is up. Thank you for your insight today, Miss Julie.
Thank you so
Such
much.
yes, such an eye-opener to us as an interior designer. Yeah. And we also give applause and thank you to Istituto Marangoni and the Written ID for the collaboration. Thank you
Excellent.
so much about the opportunities. And I think that's it. And today's session is ended. I will give the session back to Miss Zarina, sorry.
Okay. Thank you so much and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
Thank you, Julie.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye. Bye.
Thank you, Miss Ika, and thank you, Miss Julie Ross, for
You're
that
welcome.
wonderful presentation from Institute of in London. And
Thank you.
thank you to all the speakers who involved in this Titik Temu webinar session for sharing their astonishing thoughts and wonderful experience in design process and scenarios since day one. We trust everybody enjoyed today's session and appreciate the time and effort involved by the committee to make this program a successful event. We hope all of you enjoy the competition and the collaboration between the participants from Malaysia and Indonesia, as well as in London. And please don't forget to join our final webinar session by Mr. Bill Bensley and our award ceremony on the 27th September 2021. And with that, thank you all and have a pleasant evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
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 Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you, everybody. See you at 27.
Thank you.
Thank you. Terima kasih, mentor. Betty.
Thank you.
Committee. Everybody, ya.
Thank you all. Good job,
Terima
everyone.
kasih. Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Julie, Ra.
Terima kasih.